Remember the final scene of episode 3 that looked like they spent about half the show's budget on that one scene? This entire episode was like that. This entire episode felt like a big budget movie. It was cinematic, it was huge in scope, the CG was movie quality, and yet even after all that, after this episode of the Loki TV show that looked like it cost more money than some of the MCU movies, the thing that's really got me all anxious and excited is one thing in particular. Where is my Alligator Loki spin-off, damn it? Alright. I'm mostly kidding about that, but wow. If you're still complaining about the show being boring after this episode, I don't know what to tell you. So much happened this week, and they set the stage for a really big finale. I don't know how they could possibly make it bigger than this episode, they probably won't, but I'm definitely excited for it. However, if Alligator Loki does not return, then my excitement is going to die down pretty quickly. The episode begins with a pretty jaw-dropping shot where the camera is zooming through the TVA, and then zooming through the Timekeeper's chamber, and then zooming through the place where Loki ended up last week. It's some kind of post-apocalyptic future situation, and we're panning across this massive, huge, destroyed city that looks amazing, and off in the distance, there's this gigantic, thundering black and purple cloud. It kind of reminds me of the smoke monster from Lost. If the smoke monster from Lost didn't suck. Like, this is the good version of that. And then the smoke takes the form of this monstrous creature, kind of looks like a T-Rex or something. Already it looks like they spent a ton of money on this episode, and we haven't even gotten started yet. Then we're back at the TVA. Sylvie's done screwing around. She wants to know who's really behind the TVA, but Ravona's not talking, so Sylvie figures no need to keep her alive then, so Ravona placates her with, hey, Loki might not be dead, and I'm telling you this willingly. It totally has nothing to do with me not wanting to die, because I want answers too. I want to know who's at the top of this thing, and who lied to me. It's still kind of unclear how much Ravona actually knows or doesn't know about all this, but Sylvie's not spoiled for options right now. Ravona explains that when they prune a branch from the timeline, they can't destroy all its matter, so they move it somewhere else where it can't grow anymore. A void at the end of time, where every instance of existence collides at the same point and just stops. She doesn't know why it stops, but that's where Loki is right now. And she says she can help Sylvie if Sylvie trusts her. And there's really no reason to trust her, but again, very few options. Cut back to the void where all the Lokis are making their way through the terrain, and visually this episode is so fun because the FX team inserted all these nods to so many different timelines just sitting there in the background. Throughout the episode I spotted a wrecked pirate ship, the Arc de Triomphe, the Sphinx, giant stone heads of some kind, not sure what that's in reference to, and what looked like part of a Star Trek starship. I mean, it wasn't since they don't have the Star Trek license, but it looked just similar enough to get the message across without getting Disney and Marvel sued. Very sneaky. So Loki's really freaking out, he wants to know what the hell's going on, but Child Loki tells him to shut up or Alioth will notice them. That's the giant smoke monster. He says this is where the TVA drops all their rubbish and Alioth makes sure it can never return. So they're stuck here. There's no way out and they can't cause a Nexus event because the TVA doesn't care about what happens here, so they're all basically screwed. Also, Child Loki is in charge of this group because in his timeline, he killed Thor, earning him big-time street cred, and whether that makes Loki jealous or disturbed or a little bit of both is kept pretty vague. Also, Alligator Loki is with him, so the moral of the story is, don't with Child Loki. They have an underground bunker that looks like a bowling alley they converted into a clubhouse of sorts. Also, this was funny, the camera pans down through the ground when they're climbing into it, and buried in the earth, best sight gag of the episode, we see a tiny Loki trapped in a jar trying to get out. Cut to the TVA where Miss Minutes is back. Ravona wants her to access restricted files on the beginning of time and the founding of the TVA, but Sylvie is more interested in the end of time, because what if it's not just a void? What if there's more beyond that? Because if whatever's beyond that is something entirely new, then it would be impossible to create a Nexus event there, making it the perfect place for whoever they're looking for to hide, assuming the person they're looking for isn't hiding in plain sight. I'm looking at you, Miss Minutes. Now the temp pad can't take them there, so Miss Minutes suggests they take the Void spacecraft, this prototype craft made specifically for traveling to the Void. That sounds perfect, except Sylvie gets suspicious when Miss Minutes takes a weirdly long time pulling up the file on this craft. And sure enough, she was just stalling until backup arrived. TVA troops barge in, Sylvie takes cover, she wonders if the whole act was fake or if Ravona's genuinely wondering about the man behind the curtain, and Ravona looks conflicted about this, but not enough to do anything about it, at least not yet. So she's gonna be a good little mindless drone for the time being, and promises that if Sylvie surrenders, she'll put Sylvie in a time loop of a happy memory. But Sylvie only has one of those, so instead, Sylvie turns the pruning staff on herself. And you'd think that this just made Ravona's job a lot easier, but good God, think of the paperwork she's in for. Over at the bowling alley clubhouse, all the Lokis are trading war stories, and Alligator Loki calls bullshit that Black Loki killed Captain America and Iron Man and claimed all 6 Infinity Stones in his timeline, and attacks Black Loki when Black Loki shoots back that at least his Nexus event wasn't eating the wrong neighbor's cat. Alligator Loki. What a character. Not that it means very much in the long run, I guess, but I find Black Loki very interesting. Not for any particular reason, I just thought it was refreshing that you've got a race-swapped version of Loki here, and they never once said that Black Loki was persecuted more than the other Lokis, or that Black Loki was superior to the other Lokis. They didn't even draw attention to Black Loki being a Black Loki. It was never mentioned. He was just like every other Loki. That was nice. And man, does it say a lot about where pop culture is at these days that I feel something like this deserves to be pointed out when it happens. Anyway, Old Man Loki's story is that he cast a projection of himself that was so awesome it actually fooled Thanos while he hid and escaped. And after he drifted in space for a while, he realized that pain followed him wherever he went. So he traveled to a remote planet and lived in isolation for a long time. And the TVA left him alone as long as he wasn't changing anything. But eventually he got lonely. He actually missed his brother, if you can believe that. So he tried to leave, and when he stepped off the planet, that's when the TVA showed up. Because Lokis only have one part to play: the god of outcasts. Loki's heard enough at this point. Lokis are good at surviving, but they're good at escaping too, dammit. So he's gonna escape this place, get back to the TVA, and find Sylvie because she's the key to taking the TVA down. And he thinks all he has to do to accomplish this is kill Alioth. And all the other Lokis just laugh. Kill a giant smoke monster? Man, it would take at least 6 seasons worth of convoluted, nonsensical bullshit to work that one out, and even then it still wouldn't make any sense. He's not gonna find any help here, so Loki leaves alone, and waiting for him when he gets to the surface is Politician Loki with a small army of other nondescript Lokis. Meanwhile, Sylvie wakes up in an old school bus just before it's devoured by Alioth. She runs for it, and a tendril of smoke touches her for just a second, which gives her a momentary vision of something, like a weird old house or haunted mansion of some kind, but no time to dwell on that right now, because she sees a pizza delivery car racing to the rescue, and it's being driven by Mobius. He's still alive. Good for him. Back at the bowling alley clubhouse, it turns out that Black Loki betrayed everyone. He secretly made a deal with Politician Loki for use of Politician Loki's army of nondescript Lokis, so Black Loki could usurp Child Loki and take the throne for himself, so that finally Black Loki could take his rightful place as king of the bowling alley clubhouse. Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal, Black Loki! But then, Politician Loki swerves Black Loki by going back on their deal, so Politician Loki can be king of the bowling alley clubhouse. Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal, Politician Loki! But then, Politician Loki's army of nondescript Lokis turns on him, so they can be kings of the bowling alley clubhouse. Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal, army of... I'll stop now. So Alligator Loki bites Politician Loki's hand off, like a boss, and then a huge fight breaks out with all the different Lokis trying to kill each other. As the saying goes, this escalated quickly. It was pretty fucking funny though. And goddammit, it's absolutely what would happen if you put a whole bunch of Lokis in a room together. This is just what he does. Surprisingly, Old Man Loki can teleport, which begs the question of why did they have to walk to the damn bowling alley clubhouse if he could have teleported them there, but I digress. He gets himself, Loki, Child Loki, and Alligator Loki out of there, and then laments that they lie and cheat and stab each other in the back, and what the hell's it all for? Power and glorious purpose? But those things seem meaningless to him now, because he thinks every version of Loki is just broken forever. And Child Loki adds that whenever one of them tries to fix themselves, they're sent here to die. Alligator Loki says nothing. He just silently agrees. Like a badass. But Loki protests and says that all this futility is why he has to get out of here and find Sylvie, because nothing can ever change until the TVA is stopped. So the other Lokis decide to help him out a little bit. They'll take him where he needs to go, but taking on Alioth is a death sentence, so once they get there, he's on his own. Back to the pizza delivery car, where Mobius is reflecting on how he always thought the TVA were the good guys, and even apologizes to Sylvie for that unfortunate business of hunting her like a dog for her whole life. And old grudges don't seem to matter much to Sylvie now anyway, so she tells Mobius to drive back to the smoke monster. She pruned herself to find Loki, but figures the smoke monster must have already gotten him, so now the only thing that matters is getting out of here and stopping the TVA. Loki's plan to kill Alioth isn't going as well as he'd hoped. A giant battleship drops down right in front of him, pruned from some war or naval conflict, I guess, and he figures he can sneak around the back while Alioth is busy with that, but despite the crew fighting back as best they can, Alioth destroys the whole ship in a matter of seconds. Plot-wise, you probably could have cut this out, but it's a pretty big and impressive set piece in an episode full of them, so don't stop on my account. So now that the plan, such as it is, has gone tits up, Mobius and Sylvie arrive. Loki is really happy to see them. It's cute. Sylvie explains that whoever they're looking for is beyond the void at the end of time, and Alioth is like a guard dog blocking the way. But she thinks Loki's plan to kill Alioth kinda stinks, so she's going to enchant Alioth instead. I'm not sure how that's a better plan. It seems every bit as unlikely to succeed as Loki's plan was, but she seems pretty confident about it. Back at the TVA, Ravonna opens up a secret door in the wall, and inside there's a cell where B-15 is being kept. She chides B-15 for being disloyal, but B-15 is like, disloyal to who? You were there, you saw everything. The timekeepers are bullshit. This whole place is built on a lie. So B-15 thinks the TVA needs to know the truth, but Ravonna thinks the TVA needs stability, and until we have more information about what exactly is going on here, I'm almost inclined to agree with that, and she wants to know everything B-15 knows about Sylvie since B-15 had a link with her. B-15 says Sylvie is driven by revenge, and she realizes that for Ravonna, this isn't about protecting the TVA, not really. Ravonna wants to know who's behind this too, but maybe she doesn't want it badly enough to risk destroying everything, which means that she won't find them before Sylvie does, because Ravonna only wants that, but Sylvie needs it. So Ravonna tells Miss Minutes to get her those restricted files because whoever created the TVA is in danger, and it's unclear what she actually wants to do about any of this. Is she still loyal to the TVA after everything that's happened? We don't know. Meanwhile, this show is supposed to be about Loki, so maybe we should check in with him. Back in the Void, Mobius says that if he gets back to the TVA, he'll want everyone there to know the truth. And Old Man Loki is surprised to learn that Mobius could turn on the thing he devoted his whole life to, but Mobius believes that it's never too late to change. And then we go to Loki and Sylvie in the most awkward situation Loki's ever found himself in. They've both been filled in on Mobius's theory that them acting on their incredibly weird and creepy feelings for each other could break the very fabric of reality, and neither of them know what to do about it. So there are a bunch of moments here where they kind of skirt around the idea of flirting with each other, but then don't do it. Like they almost try to flirt, but then pull back, because they both may be into this, but it's still really fucking weird, even for a Loki. It's cold, so Loki conjures up a blanket, but it's only for him. Finally, he makes it big enough for both of them. It's not snugly, but he made an attempt at least. Sylvie doesn't know how to do this because she doesn't have friends or anyone in her life really, so her social skills are kinda crap, whereas Loki's betrayed everyone who ever loved him, and he claims that's not who he is anymore. I'm not sure if I buy that, but Sylvie seems to accept it. And then they float the idea that maybe when this is all over, they could figure out what to do next together. You know, assuming existence is still a thing in some form or another, maybe they could get coffee, take in a show, possibly have reality-destroying sex. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. So later, they're about ready to do this. Sylvie got a glimpse of something when she linked to Alioth earlier, so she believes that enchanting it is possible. But no need for them all to get if this doesn't work, so she gives Loki the temp pad she took from Ravonna, which wouldn't be able to portal them to the void, but can portal them away from the void. And in one of the more significant bits of character growth he's gotten, Loki decides to stay and see this through with her. The other Lokis are staying too, because they've just gotten used to this place apparently, and Child Loki conjures a sword for Loki before they take off. But Mobius is going back to the TVA to burn it to the ground. His words. What is it with pop culture today and wanting to burn institutions to the ground? It seems like that idea is popping up everywhere lately. Don't people in Hollywood have any other ideas? Shit, what am I saying? Of course they don't. So this is where Loki and Mobius part ways for now. Mobius tries to shake Loki's hand, but Loki gives him a big hug instead. And hell, I'd want to hug Owen Wilson too. I still remember Wedding Crashers, man. I laughed so hard at that movie I almost pissed myself. And yeah, it's a really nice moment. Loki, where he started at the end of Avengers, probably wouldn't even have been capable of this. My biggest concern about Marvel doing this show was them needing to retcon most of Loki's character development to make it happen. And hats off to the writers, because not only has that character development still mattered, but they've taken Loki to a really interesting new place. He made a friend, he's got a whatever the hell Sylvie is supposed to be. These are pretty big steps for Loki. Mobius portals out, so it's just Loki and Sylvie now. Sylvie says they'll wait for a branch to appear, and when Alioth goes for the branch, that's when she'll enchant it. But when no branches appear, I guess they get bored, so they decide to distract Alioth instead. Loki, uncharacteristically, or so you would think, volunteers to do this. So he tries to distract Alioth. It doesn't work. Alioth goes for Sylvie anyway, but the day is saved when Old Man Loki returns and distracts Alioth by conjuring up a facsimile of Asgard. Like the entire city. And I thought this episode was big already. Holy shit. So Sylvie takes Loki's hand, says they're gonna enchant this bastard together, and Loki will know how to do that because they're the same. Old Man Loki basically sacrifices himself so they can do this, finally finding his glorious purpose and proving to himself that Lokis actually can change, and I'm not sure why he couldn't just teleport out of there at the last minute, but he doesn't, and Old Man Loki dies. That's kind of a bummer. So Loki and Sylvie take this opportunity, they grab a hold of Alioth, they enchant it just before it consumes them, and then the angry clouds part to reveal that creepy old house haunted mansion thing from Sylvie's vision. That's where it ends. That'll lead us into the finale. I think the next one is the finale. And I'm seeing two possibilities for who's really behind all this. Number one, Kang, which would make sense, but I think he's the villain in Ant-Man 3, so that seems unlikely. And two, more likely we're looking at a Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow situation where the real creator of the TVA is long dead and Miss Minutes has secretly been running things ever since. Or maybe Miss Minutes is the creator. I don't know. Either way, Miss Minutes is up to something. I'm sure of it. This episode was great. This was one of those payoff episodes that was the reward for waiting through the ones that were slower paced and had a lot of talking and very little action. I still like those episodes. I know some people didn't, but the reason they did them was because they were saving their money for stuff like this. Not only was it visually amazing with all the sight gags and all the different Lokis, not to mention the tons of CG that made it look more like a movie than a TV show, but all the character progression was on point too. The writers have completely proven me wrong about the Loki character. I was really wary about this show at first. They'd have to retcon Loki's character development, I don't like that, and what else can you really do with him, and are they just gonna do the same type of arc over again, and blah blah blah. And color me surprised, because the attention to character, and Loki's development in particular, is one of the best things about this. They've taken him to a place that's similar to where he was at the start of Infinity War, but with a little more nuance to it and different dimensions that he didn't have before too. And it's not just him. Old Man Loki, who at a glance seemed like a one-off side character, gets an arc that's actually pretty meaningful. All the TVA characters are getting developed, and Sylvie too. She does kind of seem like she's taken over the show at certain points, but she is also a Loki, which means the show is kind of about her as much as it is about Loki Prime. And the odds of her surviving the finale, I suspect, are not great, whereas our Loki is probably pretty safe, so don't make this a bigger thing than it needs to be. Now we've got the big climax coming up next week, and they've got a bunch of really tantalizing questions to answer. Who's really behind the TVA? Will Mobius finally get his jet ski? Will Alligator Loki return? Will Loki and Sylvie sodomize reality by way of each other until they all walk with a limp? I don't know, but I'm a lot more interested to find out than I was about whether or not Sam's sister was going to sell the boat in Falcon Winter Soldier, I'll tell you that. If this episode didn't get you on board with Loki, then it's probably not meant to happen and the show is just not for you, but I had a lot of fun with this one. I appreciated the dump truck full of money they must have poured into the production budget without sacrificing story or character in the process, and I see that more rarely than one might think these days. In fact, this might have been my favorite episode out of all the Marvel Disney Plus shows so far. And yeah, they've been a mixed bag. I'm not saying they've been perfect or anything, but I mean that in a good way. So I'm excited for the finale and to find out what's going on. It could still all fall apart, and I'm not ruling that out yet, but the writers are this close to sticking the landing. So one more to go, writers, and we can go home happy. Don't blow it. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review. So much for keeping these things short, huh? I tried. Let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments, and while you're here, ding the bell icon and follow me on social media so you'll always know when I upload new stuff. I also have a live streaming channel now, the links are down there. Thumbs up the video, share, subscribe, make sure you're still subscribed, and I'll be back with more soon. So stay tuned for that, do all the YouTube things, and I'll see you next time.